User JC Beats wanted me to do an extended video talking through some of the books I recommended in my short video, books that I claimed are some of the best contemporary books concerning the existence of God, whether we can investigate the question of God's existence philosophically and affirm God's existence through reason and evidence. You all know my position on that. So there's many good books, when it comes to philosophy of religion and metaphysics and natural theology. I just wanted to pick out some of my favorites. And I think the original comment actually asked me to talk through my entire library. That would be a large task, and there's a lot of stuff in my library that actually isn't very good. So I'm probably not going to do that, but if you want me to do more videos where I just maybe pick some of my favorites, the choicest selections, if you will, related to different categories, whether it's metaphysics or epistemology or logic or philosophy of science. If you want to see that, just let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to do that. Anyway, let's get started here. I don't have these in any particular order. I picked these books not because I agree with everything in them. In fact, that would be impossible because many of these books disagree with each other on many different issues. I picked them because I think that they are just well done. There's good philosophy, there's good argument in these books. So let's go through them. I'll just offer a couple remarks on each of them. This one is a cool one. This is called 3 Views on Christianity and Science. You get these books out every now and then, these 3 views, these 4 views, or dialogue books. They're usually decent, and oftentimes I think they're just decent, but this one I thought was really good. You have Michael Roos, who is a well-known agnostic, atheist, kind of naturalist, philosopher of science. And I say all that because it's actually kind of confusing what his position actually is, and he's even inconsistent at times, I think, in this book on being clear on what his position is. Bruce Gordon calls him out a couple of times. And Bruce Gordon is the one who really impressed me in this book. And in fact, I think if you just skip to the exchanges between Bruce and Michael, you would get a lot out of this book. Bruce just, brings a lot of really cool, interesting, and good insights in here, presents a contingency argument, argues for theism being able to better support what we need to affirm ourselves as knowers and the foundations of science and all that. So good book, would recommend that. All right, next one is Neo-Aristotelian Perspectives in Metaphysics. 2, I think, really, there's a lot of standout stuff in here, but related to God's existence, I would check out Bill Valachella's essay, where he's arguing against the thin conception of existence, and for a thick conception. That's obviously going to be important for Thomistic metaphysics, especially. And then Rob Koons, our sweet, beloved Dr. Rob Koons, has a really, really good article in here on the existence of God. So definitely check that out. I know a lot of people are probably familiar with this one. Ed Feser is very popular. I think this is a very solid book, 5 Proofs of the Existence of God. As the title shows, he gives a sort of Aristotelian proof, a Neoplatonic proof, we should say, an Augustinian proof, the argument from eternal truths, the Thomistic proof, and the proof using the principle of sufficient reason from Leibniz. Of course, he's doing it all from like a scholastic metaphysical background. So the book has a nice, it's got a unity to it. So really good. I think the chapter, this one that's been well worn on. I'm not going to find it. Yeah, here we go. The nature of God is in relation to the world. Some really good stuff there. In fact, if I were teaching a master's. If I were taking a semester in natural theology, I would probably assign this book. Yeah, so solid. This one is hard to get, but I think it's absolutely brilliant. Barry Miller is just a genius. A New Paradigm for Existence. This is his 3rd in a series, and this is where you get some really cool notions from Barry Miller as God as a sort of limit case, and how to properly think of existence. So this is more kind of, I guess, it's not just concerned about God's existence, but obviously the metaphysics that Miller is doing here have significant implications for thinking about God and the existence of God. And towards the end of the book, he obviously investigates that. So yeah, really good book. Here's a debate book between Jack Smart and John Haldane, Smart being the atheist, Haldane being the theist. As far as debate and dialogue books go, I think this is just brilliant. I mean, you have 2 top-rate intellectuals, philosophers, going at it. this was a book that was significant for me in many ways. Check out John Haldane's sort of seeds he plants in here for his prime thinker argument. If you're somebody who's like trying to find something to do PhD work on, I think there's just a lot of opportunity there. Haldane plants some seeds. He doesn't fully develop it, but it's really fascinating stuff. And it's just a really good, if you just want to kind of like just hear the, a strong presentation from both sides and just weigh them. I think this is a really good book for that. Alex Pruse's book, Infinity, Causation, and Paradox. He's going to be arguing for causal finitism, the idea that no one effect can be preceded by an infinite number of causes. That's going to be important because if that's true, it's going to help run certain cosmological arguments for God, particularly the Kalam cosmological argument. Good book, technical book, important book. Recommend that. All right, our friend Gavin Kerr, I've included 2 of his books here. We know Gavin, right? His Aquinas' Way to God, brilliant book-length treatment of Aquinas' De Ente in defense of that. And then the follow-up, Aquinas' Metaphysics of Creation. So the first one is more directly related to philosophical reasoning and cosmological reasoning about God. So, but the second one also, has a fair amount of that in there, and then just explore some of the deeper metaphysical implications. So I put them both in there. Definitely worth it. Canassus's book, similar thing. We're looking at Thomistic existentialism and cosmological reasoning for God. I was hesitant about putting this book in here because even though I think the philosophy is really well done, I just have to say this book is just not well organized. It's kind of difficult to get through, but if you're willing to be patient, I think you'll get a lot out of it. So just a fair warning and heads up there. Most people are familiar with Brian Davis. His book, Thinking About God, has a lot of good stuff on here, especially about divine simplicity, so would highly recommend this. People are probably wondering, why didn't I put his book about the problem of evil in here? Well, I would just consider the problem of evil an entirely separate video. So I could do a whole video of a big stack of books on the problem of evil, and Brian Davis's book would be in there, his Reality of God and Problem of Evil. But in terms of just natural theology and thinking about the existence and nature of God, this is a really good one. This would be pretty good for introductory book as well. All right, moving on. Here's another more recent debate book, Is There a God? Graham Oppy and Kenneth Pearce. Really good. A lot of people consider sort of Graham Oppy as the one of the best, if not the best, sort of naturalist philosophers of religion. So you're going to get a high quality exchange here and just really good clash. Kenneth Pearce is he's interesting. He's I don't agree with all the positions, the theistic positions he takes, but he's got a really interesting way of formulating the cosmological argument in here, and there's some good discussion about the debates around simplicity, theoretical simplicity, and stuff like that. So really, I would really recommend this book for those interested in that debate. Norris Clark, one of my favorite thinkers, he's got this slim book. This would be a good sort of introductory book as well, called The Philosophical Approach to God. And it's actually the philosophical approaches, because there's a couple different paths he looks at in this book. This is a cool book because he also will lay the groundwork for the doctrine of analogy, and even, he's sort of ahead of the game on issues concerning God's contingent knowledge and how that relates to free will and stuff like that. So even though it's a thin book, it's quite substantial on some issues that have sort of re-emerged in the contemporary philosophy of religion concerning, just the coherence of theism and stuff. 2 from Jacques Maritain, Approaches to God. You're going to get Maritain's read on Aquinas' 5 ways, so that's what that is. I think it's very well done. And then his sort of famous metaphysical book, Existence and the Existent. This is really awesome, not just for, again, thinking philosophically about God, but he's got just some really powerful stuff in here concerning, again, deep questions of free will in relation to God's immutability and even predestination. So Maritain is one of my go-to guys for the really hard stuff, particularly God's knowledge of sin and predestination and all that. And there's another book by Maritain. I didn't put it in here because it's not concerned with just the existence of God, but it's called God and the Permission of Evil, that I think is just fantastic. Necessary Existence by Pruss and Rasmussen, really cutting-edge book arguing for the need to affirm a necessary portion of reality. Now, that doesn't necessarily get you immediately to God, but that's sort of a really important, one might say necessary first step in contingency arguments. So, this is just a really important book for those who are interested in contingency arguments and the existence of God. Just top rate philosophy, for sure. Get this one. O'Connor's book, Theism and Ultimate Explanation, really kind of exotic in certain ways, but really good book in terms of thinking about modality and even theodicy too. He takes sort of something of a Leibnizian optimism in this book, where he's going to argue that God really creates an infinite number of worlds with a sort of minimum lower bound but no upper bound. So that's interesting. I think, again, O'Connor is just doing good philosophy. Don't agree with him in everything in this book, but still definitely worth picking up. Adler's book, How to Think About God, was one of the first I read in natural theology, and I think there's still a lot of just cool, important stuff in here. Other stuff I disagree with. I think he gets Aquinas wrong in some significant ways, but it's just a good book. It's an easy read, so this might not... I say this would be good for beginners, but there's I guess portions of this that I so disagree with now, I'd almost be hesitant to say this is the one you should maybe start with, but I love Adler. Go ahead, do what you want. All right, this one's a little different. This is Stump's God of the Bible and God of the Philosophers, so she's going to argue for the compatibility of classical theism, a Thomistic classical theism, and of course, the God of religion, the God of the Bible, how they are one and the same God. So she's looking... at the compatibility between divine simplicity and immutability, and how that does not preclude God from being, intimately related to us and responding to prayers and all those things. So if you're interested in those questions, this one isn't so much about arguing for the existence of God as it is just, fitting together the God of the Bible and the God of the philosophers. So I wanted to put that in there as well. Another one that I don't have here but needs to be here, I just couldn't find it, is Stump's Aquinas. Brilliant book. And that gives a really dense treatment of divine simplicity and eternity, and her section in Aquinas on eternity, I think, is just brilliant. Dodd's One Creator God, another good, just sort of general beginner Thomistic overview. So if you're just kind of looking for a good introductory Thomistic viewpoint, I think this one is pretty good. I think it's very good, actually. If they're in this collection, I think that these are all really well done. Here's a book that I was assigned in my master's program that I thought was really valuable, An Introduction to Natural Theology. You'll get all the background you need to understand what natural theology is. You'll get good presentations of Aquinas' 5 ways and some other paths, philosophical approaches to God, and examining, again, the coherence of theism, the divine attributes, all that stuff. So this was one of those kind of things that, I was just assigned it in my master's program. I just thought it was really well done, and I've returned to it many times since. Robert Spitzer's got this book called New Proofs for the Existence of God. He gives a sort of Lonergan-flavored argument for the existence of God in here for the philosophical approach, which is really cool. But then he also looks at how a lot of the scientific evidence seems to be strongly indicative of theism as well, from fine-tuning and, modern cosmology, Big Bang, all that sort of thing. So I think he just does a really nice job in this book, if you're interested in that. One in the Many, Norris Clark. I've recommended this many times. This is going to give you sort of the necessary background metaphysical scheme that will lead up to sort of naturally flow toward the affirmation of God as the ultimate source of intelligibility. But he does give particular arguments at the end of the book that are Thomistic in spirit that I think are well done. John Haldane, his collection of essays here on reasonable faith, he's got some good stuff on thinking about God's existence in here as well. Haldane is a top-rate thinker, and this is just a really good, and so this being a collection of essays is just something I highly recommend. This one, the Blackwell Companion in Natural Theology, definitely more suited toward professional philosophers, but it is a powerhouse. So, I think the kind of highlight of this would probably be Alex Pruse's contribution of the contingency argument. But it's all good. It's all good. You have moral arguments in here. You have Tim and Lydia McGrew's sort of argument, a cumulative argument for the resurrection. Of course, you've got Bill Craig's stuff in here. It's just a tremendous volume. All right, most people know Whipple, who are Thomists anyways, of being sort of the champion of Thomistic thought, and this book being sort of the premier volume of that. So if you're interested in just, all things Thomas Aquinas, including how to think about his ways of thinking about the existence of God, the 5 ways, and De Ente, and all that good stuff, then you can't go wrong with this book. This is the second copy I have of this, actually. And just a few more here. This one's kind of recent, but I thought it was well done. This is The Return of the God Hypothesis by Stephen Meyer, and this is going to be looking, this is not like, making a metaphysical proof per se, but he's going to be using inference to the best explanation. He's going to say that God, makes the God hypothesis is the best hypothesis, right? For various reasons and in many different ways. This is a very dense book. It's very thorough, very comprehensive. It's invited a lot of debate, but however you feel about Dr. Meyer, you got to give the guy credit. He tries to be thorough, and that's one thing I always appreciate about thinkers, no matter where they are. If they just try to be precise and thorough, I always respect that. This one by Spitzer's cool. You're going to get some Thomistic-inspired philosophical reasoning for God, but you're also going to get really good overview of the contemporary research surrounding near-death experiences and some, good philosophical interpretation on that. So this is a good kind of blend book of the philosophical arguments for God and say suggestive empirical evidence. Finally, the man that I always recommend all the time, Bernard Lonergan, Insight. This is really an epistemology book. But chapter 19 of this book is so significant in arguing for God's existence that I had to include it here. I mean, you could read chapter 19 by itself and benefit from it, but you're not going to get the full richness of this book unless you actually roll up your sleeves and work your way through it. But if you're serious about philosophy and epistemology, this is an indispensable title. Lonergan was one of the guys who just, influenced me in so many ways. There's books that aren't here that should have been here. I mentioned Thomas Aquinas. Let me mention 2 more, and then we'll say goodbye. And some apples there if you guys are trying to be healthy. Some almond butter, baby wipes. One is Josh Rasmussen's 2 books by Josh Rasmussen. One is How Reason Can Lead to God. That's not here. I think it's in my backpack. Incredible book. Needs to be on here. But also Rasmussen's dialogue book with Felipe Leon, Is God the Best Explanation of Things? Also a tremendous book that is not in this pile, but is one that I think is one of the best, a good dialogue debate book. And then the last one that is not in this pile because I could not find it, I was searching all around for it, I don't know where it is David Bentley Hart's book, The Experience of God. And you're going to get a good presentation of the contingency argument there. He's got some good overviews of the debates in philosophy of mind against materialism and stuff like that. So so that should get you guys started. If you just want to know any more about any of these books in general, or maybe you're just wondering which would be the best to start with, depending where you're at, just leave a comment, let me know, and I'd be happy to offer whatever insights or advice I can. And if you like these book reviews, let me know. Just let me know what topics you might want to see. I'll be happy to pull some from the library and just chat through them with you. So thanks for tuning in, and cheers. Please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I appreciate you. So goodbye.